Okay, the Great Migration has begun. Let's talk about what that means for our gardens. It is the second full week in August, creeping into the third, and there were certain signs that I start looking for that means fall is right around the corner. And that means we need to start thinking about what that means for our landscape. Now, this is a completely random observation, but it happens every year around now, and it's my first sign that things are happening. I don't know if you can make this out very well. I have no idea what kind of bird it is, but every year around now, I start noticing these swarms of birds. Now, they're dive bombing and swooping in, and they always reminded me school of bluefish and school of fish that are migrating in the fall. Always the best time to go fishing, and but they're just dive bombing all different directions. But the weirdest thing about it is they coexist with dragonflies. And I always thought they were attacking the dragonflies because it's hard to see in here because I can zoom in, but you can see it right there. Little tiny dragonflies. And I can't say they're tiny because compared to the birds, they're small. But they're out there and they're swarming with them. And I always notice at this time of year because they look like sparrows. They're not, but they're about that size. I'm sure I could look it up and find out what it is. But it was the weirdest observation that they coexist with these dragonflies. I have no idea if the birds are trying to eat the dragonflies, but I hope not, because I only see like 3 or 4 dragonflies out there, and I don't see the birds actually dive bombing them. But clearly these birds are staying in this area, and I can see the dragonflies hugging on the bottom. So maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but that to me is my first sign that says, yes, fall is right around the corner. Okay, my next observation that fall is right around the corner is my hummingbirds. I noticed in the last week and a half, they're hitting my bird feeders, the hummingbird feeders, and hitting the flowers even more than the bird feeders. And they're really hitting it hard, and they're sticking around. So this is the coolest time of year to get the best photos of hummingbirds because I find that they just stick around. So if you haven't fed them or if you haven't replenished your feeders, now's the time to kind of get your feeders out there or perk up any of the hummingbird plants, because the simple fact, oh, my hair's going crazy. The simple fact that if they remember, it's amazing creatures. These hummingbirds are about to fly south, and they're about to go south all to Mexico for the winter. And they're going to memorize every plant along the way. And so when they find plants right now, I find that the migration up and the migration down south are the best times to get new hummingbirds, because when they take up residency, they start looking for a good food source. So in season, when you're feeding hummingbirds, I find they're not flying too far away. They're staying in the neck of the woods. They've got their patterns, and yes, you may entice them to stick around the yard. But when they're migrating north or migrating south, I always feel like that's your best opportunity to catch their attention. And if they fly into your yard and notice that, hey, there's lots of food here, they're going to remember that. And they'll probably stop by on their way up. Just like when we go on vacation, we tend to stop at our favorite restaurants on the way up to New Hampshire or maybe on the way back down to Jersey. So it doesn't really matter. Get their attention now. So make sure you do not neglect your hummingbird feeders right now. Do not neglect your flowers. And let's talk about that for a minute. All right, so what's going on in the gardens outside of the hummingbirds? It's the short days. The short days are starting to trick a lot of plants to actually flowering. The problem is right now when you look around your beds, with all the rain that we've been getting, it's pros and cons. One, our flower beds many times, plants didn't dry out as fast. Our grass is many times looking good, but I'm also noticing big brown patches in people's lawns. And that's actually probably a fungus brewing around. So it's time to start thinking about fall renovations as far as lawns. We are just coming into the single best time of year to plant anything, which is actually funny because most of us start to tune out around now. We start thinking, still big projects. Maybe we're thinking about putting in a patio or any projects in the yard that we haven't done. We still think about it. But as far as the flowers, we kind of chalk it off and think, oh, I'll deal with that in the spring. Same thing with our lawn. Oh, I'll deal with it in the spring. It's absolutely the worst time of year to be planting. So now's the time. The ground is warm. The air is cooling off. The day length is getting shorter. And so that's stimulating most plants to focus on their roots and to get established. Any plants that you're buying right now tend to be jumbo in size. Yes, they're a little pot bound, but you divide them out, fertilize them, they're going to be great. So now's the time to get in your garden and not just chalk off the gardens for the season. Because if you start looking at your plants, maybe they just need a little extra fertilizer. A lot of the gardens, like our greenhouse here, the heat got hot. So these plants right around now, trim them back. Give them a little fertilizer. Give them a little bit of space. More than likely, you probably don't need to water because we've been getting so much rain this year. But at the same time, what I find makes our gardens look bad is maybe the edging on the edge of your flower bed, the grass has started growing in to the garden again. Maybe your perennials are growing so well that they're growing into each other and you're losing that definition between one plant and another. So it just starts looking like a shambled mess. Or when you start walking around that garden and looking at it, the weeds got ahead of you and now it just looks like a big weed fest. We still have plenty of months left to enjoy our yard. I love the fall. I find the fall is my favorite time of year. And there's lots of plants. Chrysanthemums are the most common ones. They're going to actually coming into their own. Ornamental grasses are just coming into their own. So don't chalk off your gardens yet. Just get out there, give them a good pruning, thin back the plants, any annuals, nip them back. We've talked about this multiple times. Give them a good dose of fertilizer. I like a little shot in the arm with the Miracle-Gro dispensers. I just find it efficient and easy for our customers. And then the other plants go through, I like a Spoma Plant Tone, a nice organic fertilizer. I'm going to do all my flowers. I'm going to do all my trees. I'm going to do all my perennials. And then what it's going to do is just ensure that some of those proven winter plants that I was planting all spring, they're going to look great through frost. It's only August. We still have September and October that our gardens should be looking good, depending on where you're located and when you start getting frost. Here in Rhode Island, I find that I can keep at least another 2.5 months of our gardens looking good. Some of these Plectranthus, these beasts of annuals are just coming into their own. If you're looking for a great shade-looking plant, these are going to have some pretty cool-looking purple flowers, but they're only just coming into their own. So kind of just give a garden a little housekeeping. Cut things back, fresh coat of edging, maybe top dress with some fresh mulch, and your garden's going to look awesome for the next few months. And just enjoy this beautiful weather we're going to be getting into. Fall is by far my favorite time of year, and it's a great time to do some projects. I hope that helped, and enjoy your backyard.